Naomi Wolf will join me in just a few minutes. She, of course, is an independent journalist, co-founder and CEO of dailyclout.io, co-editor of the Pfizer papers, and Facing the Beast, Courage, Faith, and Resistance in a Dark New Age, and War Room, Daily Clout. All right, she'll be here in a few minutes, but first up, Del Bigtree comes back. He very kindly is going to give us an update on an Inconvenient Study. He, of course, is an award-winning journalist and filmmaker, executive producer of the Inconvenient Study, and also CEO of the Informed Consent Action Network, host of The High Wire also. And Del's been very busy lately, and they've been coming after him. Guess what? There's been ceases and desists. There's been updates. He's been now sort of riding out to look at the issue with the overprescribing of psychotropic medication. We will get into all of that right after this.
Our laws as it pertains to substances are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for Christ's sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Welcome, everyone, particularly people that have been watching The High Wire. I appreciate you all coming over to this show to hear more from Del Bigtree. You can follow Del on X, Del Bigtree, also at inconvenientstudy.com. One more time on Naomi, you can follow her at dailyclout.io and naomiwolf.substack.com. Del, thank you for coming back. Give us an update, if you can, on the Inconvenient Study.
Well, I mean, the film has been a major success worldwide. We're nearing about 70 million views that we can track. Wow. I'm assuming we're somewhere near 100 million when you think of all the downloads in countries that maybe aren't using social media to spread the word. There's a lot of, suppression out there and censorship. So we think that a lot of the downloads we're seeing are probably being spread in different ways. But it's just been amazing. The conversation that it's creating is exactly what we wanted to happen. As I was saying to you, we're watching, real scientists weigh in on this and say, as you pointed out the last time I spoke to you, Henry Ford Health did send a cease and desist letter. They wanted to be known that this study was never published. They're saying because it didn't meet their scientific rigors, and they try to point to, confounding issues that may explain some of this. But I think you've looked at it. Peter Gutcha has looked at it, former, Cochrane collaboration scientist, and a lot of doctors and scientists saying this is a really gigantic difference between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. For some people that don't know what the Inconvenient Study is, this was done by Henry Ford Health. They compared vaccinated to unvaccinated children and their health outcomes and found in the conclusion that 2.5 times more likely to have a chronic disease if you were vaccinated, 6 times more likely to have a neurodevelopmental disorder if you were vaccinated, nearly 6 times the rate of immune disease if you were vaccinated. And then they did the timeline comparison over 10 years. What would be the likelihood that you would suffer from chronic disease? And it was 57% of children that were vaccinated were believed to suffer from chronic disease, whereas that rate would only be 17% amongst the unvaccinated. This is one study. It's 18,500 kids, 2,000 of whom were unvaccinated. And as you know, Dr. Drew, if this stood all by itself, and all science should be questioned. And I love the challenges that are happening, even on our website. If people go to an Inconvenient Study, we haven't hidden from it. We've posted the Henry Ford complaint, some of the attacks on the study itself and what they're saying. We've also pushed back and written what we think are the defenses of those different issues that they may have. But what we're seeing is this is, the most recent of many studies that have made this comparison, at least a handful, up to 10. What we've never seen, Dr. Drew, is a study that compared vaccinated to completely unvaccinated that showed that the vaccinated are healthier. And I think that's really the headline here. We should be seeing that. And, we've got amazing hearings now going on. The ACIP meetings last week, I'm sure we're going to get into. But these conversations are are housed in this film that is covering it, but we're watching it in real time. We're watching a CDC that is finally, I think, asking the questions that we assumed had been asked and answered all along the way in this vaccine program. So we really live in a very interesting moment right now where science is being questioned, not just by, journalists like myself or Naomi and doctors like yourself that are, I think, starting to have to reevaluate some of the ideas that you learned in school. But we are now seeing these conversations and debates happening inside the walls of the CDC and government, which I find incredibly refreshing.
Yeah, it is. And it's a long time coming. And Vinay Prasad, I know we'll talk about his letter, which generated a lot of action. And he is a brilliant clinician, research scientist. What was the issue that they claimed with the study, the Henry Ford study? Because as you said, I read it. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest study I'd ever seen, but it was sort of pretty simple and pretty straightforward. I didn't see any glaring issues, and there was a very strong signal. And why couldn't that signal have been published so it could generate more research? That was my question. But what was the issue that they were taking with the study itself?
Well, they point out several things, some of the confounding issues, meaning issues you might not have accounted for. You have a pretty smart audience, but there were studies that showed that alcoholism caused cancer, but then you realize you were missing the fact that alcoholics tend to smoke cigarettes, and it was actually the cigarettes. So those are the types of confounding things when we look at science, just for people that are watching, so they understand what that means. Is there something that we're not seeing that is creating an abnormal effect that we're seeing? Yeah. And so what they were looking at in the unvaccinated group is there were things like there were more African-American children in the vaccinated group than were in the unvaccinated group, but they controlled for that. They sliced it and went through and said they didn't see in the study itself. They looked at that. There was some socioeconomic differences that they looked at, but it looked like they tried to check that out. And then I would think probably the biggest one that they're going to point to, and frankly, they're going to point to any time this study will ever be done. And it's why the CDC has used as an excuse they can't do it, which is it's the amount of times an unvaccinated child goes to the doctor. In this study, ultimately, they go far less. On average, the unvaccinated children were seeing doctors 1 to 2 times a year, whereas for the vaccinated, it was, on average 7 times per year. But that's because they're going to get their vaccines and they're going for baby checkups and things like that, that unvaccinated parents just aren't going through with that. And so the argument was and is by Henry Ford Health and many experts that the unvaccinated are probably getting these autoimmune diseases and things that aren't being reported, but because they're not seeing doctors, it's not being diagnosed. But they even did a cross-section looking at that. Nonsense. And what they discovered is if a child's really sick, if they have asthma, they need an inhaler, the unvaccinated were going to the doctors. In fact, on all the major categories, when they were sick, they were seeing on average 5 times. If you had a health issue, the unvaccinated were seeing doctors about 5 times a year. So it's things like that they point out those problems. Well, they're not going to doctor as much. But when you really sliced that study, they looked at those issues and I think proved them out. So I think Henry Ford is on thin ice with that argument. But as I've said, any retrospective study, and as you pointed out, it's not a perfect study. No retrospective study is. No retrospective study has a perfect control group and all the things that we wanted, which is why the argument has to be, why didn't we, when we had the opportunity, when these vaccines were being created, do the proper controlled study where one group got the vaccine and one group got a saline injection placebo, and we tracked them over a period of time long enough to see autoimmune diseases and see things like that. This is what we're doing with drugs, Dr. Drew. This is what I've spoken about with you. I think it's shocking for every doctor that's waking up to this, and more are. We are now being surrounded in this conversation. It's no longer an an anti-vaxxer conspiracy theory. When you see Dr. Robert Malone, who is a part of inventing mRNA technology. Looking at this, Dr. Peter McCullough, the most published heart doctor in the world, is now saying there's no placebo trials. That's a problem. Dr. Paul Merrick, the most published ICU doctor, and frankly, Dr. Drew, I think, are saying I'm troubled by the lack of proper safety testing. And look, it doesn't mean they're not safe, but it means we cannot be saying that they're safe with the sort of bravado that we have been for decades.
Yeah, that's right. It's the careful risk-reward analysis. The hepatitis B, I've been worried about that for a long time, and now thankfully that's been moved off the day one schedule. The reason for that was zero. There is a non-zero chance of serious reaction to that vaccine and a zero reaction of the child getting hepatitis B in a hepatitis B negative household. We know when there's hepatitis B in the household. We test for it. And so and even a hepatitis B household, the E antigen has to be up in the carriers, which is relatively uncommon, in order for it to be highly infectious enough that it be a household contact. Needle sticks, 0 probability. Sexual contact, 0 probability. So 3.6 million kids receive a vaccine for which there is a non-zero risk of the vaccine and a 0 risk of the hepatitis B. So it reminds me exactly of COVID with 19-year-old males. Non-zero risk of myocarditis, 0 risk of Omicron, it's COVID hurting those kids. And this is what we're kind of waking up to. And then Vinay Prasad now wrote an article looking at the data and said, look, there's been many deaths, at least 10 are for sure related to the COVID. Did you see that, the COVID vaccine rather? Did you see that Atlantic article?
I glanced at it, yes. I mean, I'm aware of the entire...
Well, it was disgusting. It was, I didn't see the whole thing, but what I read was... let me look at it again. I might have thrown it away. I was so disgusted with it. I don't think it was written by someone who's a clinician. And it was, Vinay Prasad with his inflammatory rhetoric and his political posturing. That is how a scientific paper or analysis is written. He wrote an article of the science that's available and was raising issues with his pen. And that's how we do it. That's how we talk as doctors. There was not a political thread anywhere in what he was saying. And the fact that journalists can now take that and try to spin it, this is an area that I've become gravely concerned, which is, Del, help me here. When you produce television, what did you produce?
I produced the medical talk show, The Doctors. So I am, well aware of what you have to do when you make science into news.
Right. And before that, were you doing anything else in television, any other kind of production?
No, mostly that's what I came up through the Dr. Phil world. I did Dr. Phil, then I moved into Doctors, and then of course I started doing my own investigations outside of that. Yeah.
Got it. So I'm worried that almost everything in our perceived universe in this country is under the influence of propaganda, some sort of distortion of reality. I mean, I just see it everywhere. I feel like Don Draper has been steering the ship for the last 40 years. And it's all had, of course, money at the head, but political power and NGOs and all these things that we as Americans just had good faith that this is people are operating with good faith. And it's not true. Almost everything needs to be reevaluated. And it's really concerning when you start thinking that way. And what's even more concerning, I'm happy to do that and try to think everything through and be careful. But what's concerning to me is there's at least 60% of the country that isn't aware of this. And that's what's most troubling to me.
Well, what you're leaning towards is what I believe. I think the most dangerous thing in the world we have today is media or mainstream media, or what is becoming clearer and clearer to those of us aware of it, is propaganda. And it's dangerous because you can't make the changes that are necessary if there is a constant mantra that's going on that's telling people the exact opposite of the truth, that's making them afraid of the science that's finally happening inside of the CDC, that is saying that Robert Kennedy Jr. is unqualified to be an HHS secretary when he is in a huge body of former HHS secretaries that were lawyers, some of them, lawyers for things that had nothing to do with science, whereas Bobby's been suing on science and medicine and health his entire career. He's totally qualified for it. And I know him personally, full disclosure, as you know, I was his director of communications, but I know this man. I know this would be the first guy that if the studies came out and said, it's not vaccines, he would say it. He is honestly dedicated to getting to the truth. But as you and I and Robert Kennedy Jr. and a host of doctors I've already discussed, we know that science hasn't been done properly. And then when you try to get it done, or what Vinay Prasad is pointing out, and by the way, this guy did not write an article and then put it in the New York Times. He had an internal memo that he was, telling his own team, we're going to take a deeper look at this because I've had 2 different groups now slice the bears reports, and we've looked through it, and 10 of these babies were definitely killed by the COVID vaccine. Then the press comes out with it, and then they say, oh, he's just being dramatic and trying to scare us and using big words. He wasn't even trying to make this a press release. You turned it into the press because someone leaked it. So this whole story is really fascinating. But to your point, when I watched how, I think it was, I don't know, it was like the morning show or something, where they were literally making fun of this idea that 10 babies, died, and this is ridiculous. And I ask myself, as journalists, where is your confidence coming from? Because you are, by overriding what what CBER and FDA are now saying, which is this vaccine can kill babies, but people believe you, they're listening to your show. When you write that off, do you recognize that you may now be marching children? If those parents believe you, override the report that's now known and go and vaccinate their baby and they die, do you have any idea that blood in some way could be on your hands? And where is your confidence to override Vinay Prasad, who is an incredibly talented
Where'd that come from?
doctor? And especially, where's it come from when you were the ones that were told to say it's 95% effective at stopping transmission, but now that's not true. That 10 people are getting 10 shots and still getting sick. That the social distancing was a lie. That it was made up, and we now know that Tony Fauci's admitted that in front of Congress, and that the mask, there's no studies anywhere that show that they could stop a particle as small as a coronavirus. So these journalists have watched their own lives affected by a lie that they were told to tell. They know it's a lie, but they're still wrong. They've been wrong. Yet you're still going to stand with the people.
Show me one of them that stood up and got that right. That person, if there's one of them that stood up and got it right, I might listen to that person, but I can't think of one other than yourself. But let's stop for 1 second here. I got to take a quick break. I want to talk more about the COVID vaccine, the black box warnings. I want to talk about psychotropic meds. If you can you stay?
Yes, I'd love to stay. That'd be great.
Okay. And I might bring Naomi in.
Yeah, Naomi has a hard out at 6. So.
No, I know. And so I might bring Naomi in the middle of our run here. So, okay, be right back after this.
Okay.
Next year, the national debt is going to hit $40 trillion. As insane as that sounds, it's even worse when you consider unfunded liabilities for Social Security and Medicare. If our status as the world's reserve currency suddenly changes, our nation could collapse under the weight of its debt. And as we all know, there are many forces trying hard to take down that US dollar. This is why thousands of Americans are moving portions of their retirement into physical gold and silver. Our friends at Augusta Precious Metals have put together a 3-minute report entitled Debt Will Hit $40 Trillion in 2026. Prepare your retirement now. It details how a self-directed IRA with real physical assets may be the best option in 2025. Go to drdrew.com/gold. That is DREW.com/GOLD. Or text Drew, DREW, to 35052. That's 35052. and you'll get instant access to this crucial report. If you have $50,000 or more in your IRA, 401k, TSP, or other retirement accounts, consider our friends at Augusta Precious Metals to give you the information you need to make an informed decision about your retirement. It's fine to fight for our nation's future, but we all need to protect our own futures first. Read this important 3-minute report by visiting drdrew.com/gold. That is drdrew.com/GOLD, or text Drew to 35052 and see what Augusta can do for you.
And that suggests trouble in a relationship.
Sean, who are you? Like Dr. Drew all of a sudden?
Dale Bigtree, The High Wire, the and Inconvenient Studies we were talking about, which is his documentary. Go see it. It is inconvenientstudy.com. Dale Bigtree is Dale Bigtree on X. And let's talk quickly about, COVID. It's been well established that we should not be using mRNA platforms for a respiratory virus. That is insane. And now there will be black box warnings on some of these. Tell me about that. Are you aware of what's going on there?
No, I'm not totally on that. Black box warning is not, I've been paying attention to what they're doing there, but it does need a black box warning for sure.
The point is they're right. They're saying that, hey, be careful. They're not taking them away. See, I get very worried when we throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, physicians need to have an armamentarium at their disposal to use for the best interest of the patient. And that patient, that doctor need to figure out how to do that. But whenever you get mandates involved, I go insane. Again, mandates it's anathema to the basic principles that this country was founded on. And 88 countries have no vaccine mandates, and 3 of 5 communist countries have no vaccine mandates. What are we doing? Thankfully, we've got Joe Latipo down in Florida raising this issue aggressively. I mean, there should be some sort of happy medium. I mean, yes, there's some things that during an outbreak or during problems, and we can sort of come in and really push things or use educational programs. But this sort of, hey, listen to me from on high, because your kid might step on a HIV infected or a hepatitis B infected needle. This is insane.
It is insane. And it's really highly misunderstood. I just saw Whoopi Goldberg saying on The View, who is Robert Kennedy Jr. to tell me what I'm going to do, whether I can inject a vaccine or not? Or, this is a decision between me and my doctor. I'm like, that is exactly what Robert Kennedy Jr. is doing for you. That's his position. The government should not be forcing you to vaccinate. He's doing exactly what I wish they would just blanket do with the entire program, which is just shared decision making. This is a decision between you and your doctor, like it is in other intelligent nations around the world. And to your point, why is the one truly free nation in the world one of the few that is taking away your freedom when it comes to medical choices? It makes absolutely no sense.
For your body, your bodily integrity, your children's well-being, it's in your parental rights. It's insane. So before I bring Naomi in here, you're starting to get into the world of psychotropic meds now. What are you messing around with there?
Well,
I would say one thing. I would say before you do, Del. I would just say one thing is I was just telling Susan this. She's getting very excited about the topics that you're raising awareness about, and she went, "What's with this vitamin K stuff? Why are they giving vitamin K to babies?" I said, "Look, there are things that we do that are a little perfunctory, but are in fact harmless. They really are." And we have to be really careful that we don't start attacking everything because we think it might be problematic. What I may push back. This is my way of saying I might push back on some of your psychotropic stuff. So go ahead.
Wait, we got to bring Naomi in because she doesn't have a lot of time. She probably has something to say about this.
I'm going to bring her in after I hear what Dell's into.
I think
go ahead.
She's a mother of babies. You have to understand.
Go ahead.
Well, I just very quickly, I think there's a lot to look at, right? I mean, I think we're seeing SSRIs are very problematic. We're seeing that there's the same type of lack of understanding of what God is there when it comes to depression. We had, Joanna Moncrief, come forward in 2022 and do a metadata analysis and say it may not be serotonin at all that's defining your emotional space. And then, but you see these incredible stories coming out, especially around PTSD and military and people that are coming out and saying, I went and tried, a psychedelic at a, in a place where suddenly in one treatment, it's shifted their thinking and shifted their experience, whether that's psilocybin, studies that are going on. You also have to, look at, there's all sorts of things like that, Iboga. I think all of these things are super fascinating, especially when it comes to getting off of drug addiction, where we're seeing that. So this whole space of depression, I think, needs a new, again, just like we're doing with the vaccine program, it's time. Dr. Oz, I just saw him at the Kennedy Center Honors say, we're just getting out and kicking the tires again. We're going back to reevaluate what we have said is settled science, because so much of it now appears to may be wrong. We have new information that's going on. Should there be no SSRIs? I'm with you. Look, there should be an evaluation on, are these having benefit? But that's different. What we shouldn't have are drug, commercials saying, that this is going to cure your depression and that you should get out there, when the evidence really doesn't even exist that this is targeting the right part of your experience. So I'm kind of generally saying the high wire is looking at all of these things. We're looking, and I looked at this on the doctor's television show when I worked at CBS. SSRIs were in the crosshairs then. Or is this the way to deal with depression? And we are seeing some amazing results from, microdosing of psilocybin, very interesting, down to total tripping out, I guess, on, some things down in South America.
No disagreement on everything you've said. But I want to bring Naomi in here. I'm sure she's chomping at the bit. But one quick thing, quick thing I will say is, Caleb, you may want to pull this clip. Adam Carolla was on the Free Press with Barry Weiss, and he was talking about this kind of issue and talking about how people need to be outdoors and use their hands and build things, and how the fact that we're all stuck in cubicles is getting to the point where we're starting to chew our paws off. And then we have all the propaganda on top of that, and the social media, et cetera. And he goes, and this is not specifically at what you were talking about, but it's at whether or not we are a happier, healthier nation because of these medicines. He said, have you ever seen the TV show Little House on the Prairie? Yes, it's a TV show. Yes, we understand it's a TV show, but it was about a period of history where he goes, look at them all. They were all miserable, but nobody was depressed. They were miserable, but they weren't depressed.
It's a good distinction.
And there's a line in Fiddler on the Roof where Tevye goes, the new married couple, they're both so happy they don't know how miserable they are. And so the point being is, misery is not bad, strictly speaking. Misery can help us build and become resilient and respond to things and develop resources. Right, Naomi Wolf? Let me bring Naomi in here. Naomi, of course, dailyclout.io, the Pfizer papers, War Room. There he is. You going to play that? Can we hear it? Or is it going to screw with our... Here we are. Nah, I still can't hear it.
It might be muted.
That was it. That was a click. Naomi, welcome. Welcome back.
Naomi.
Susan, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Del. Great to see you. Hi, Dr. Drew.
So I'm certain you have a lot to say. I'll just let you go. So what do you want to start with?
Well, you all have said so much, and I'm really glad that SSRIs are being looked at, because I don't know a young person who isn't either taking a mood-altering drug or thinking about taking a mood-altering drug. They're being prescribed Tic Tacs by their doctors. And I hope that, Del, that after you issue the next major study of SSRIs, you go into birth control, because young women are having horrible, horrible mood destabilization, and they don't even know why, because they're on different doses of birth control than even the pill used to use when, I was coming of age.
Naomi.
So, yeah.
Naomi, I want to stop you and just say a 100% true. I get embarrassed sometimes when my sexism blinds me, because I used to talk a lot about that and I let it go because COVID got my attention. But it is, and let me just tell you, it is the fact that these powerful progesterones, it's a whole new class of medicine. It's extremely powerful progestogen, and that's causing muscle changes, metabolic changes, mood changes, vaginal dryness, libido up, libido down, changing personality, fucking with sleep. And when we prescribe it, no doctor goes, hey, there's really a side effect profile on this, check it out. Just, hey, don't get pregnant.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's terrifying. And so first, let me congratulate Del. My goodness, what an important achievement. And I'm so glad that you're getting such a wide audience for, all these landmark cultural texts and objects that you're producing. It's high time. And I think it's also kind of a trifecta culturally, to have HHS finally doing all the right things. I mean, I've been a critic of some of what I saw as their shortcomings earlier in the administration, but we're getting early Christmas, Maha supporters.
I'm glad to hear you say that, Naomi. I'm really happy to hear you say that, because I was the one, not you necessarily, but there were a lot of people like you who were very frustrated and angry, and I just kept saying, give them time. This is hard. You're moving a battleship. My goodness. And you're right. What is it that's making you most happy?
Well, honestly, the acknowledgement or the release of the internal memo that the media has to grapple with, that you all were discussing, confirming that 10 kids died from the mRNA or subsequent to the mRNA injection. Obviously, I'm not happy about that fact, but it's now undeniable. The Atlantic has to kind of do its distraction spin in order to manage
pathetic.
It. One of the most shameful, as a journalist, shameful headlines and subheadlines in my life as a journalist. Maybe they died, whatever, but don't help the anti-vaxxers. Let's strategize our way around the anti-vaxxers. That's amazing. Looking at the childhood schedule, the questioning from HHS of the RSV injection, or is it the K injection, or both? I mean, so much is happening, and respectfully, they still don't have their comms down 100%. So it's a little hard to process exactly what's under discussion, what's a real kind of achievement already. But it's there, and they've got clearly the White House's support, POTUS's support. They're examining the science behind all those vaccines. And even to have POTUS saying, kids are getting all these injections, that's a dream come true, and that doesn't happen automatically. I know it's taken lots of internal conversations. I can imagine, from the secretary to the president and his team. So it's profound, because it's like, it's like Harry Potter and Voldemort, he who could not be named, right? Vaccines could not be named the minute you raised any question, even the most benign, like basic science, like Del was saying, here's a basic study looking at these two cohorts. You're a crazy anti-vaxxer and your career is over and there's blowback and, no one will ever speak to you. But just to center it as seriously as they have to date, and to defend the centering, as Del has been doing with such kind of solid, sober, non-hysterical, non-emotional scientific language. Like, we're scientists, we look at the science. It's both a PR coup and a real deliverable for Maha and Maha voters.
And Del, I'm going to have you respond. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, first of all, there's so much that she said is true. But what I really want to point out is something we were complaining about earlier, which is we keep talking about mainstream media, how manipulated it is, how much it's propaganda. But really, we should celebrate that is not the media that people are watching anymore. And I really want to tip my hat to Naomi and the work that she's done, but also to show how independent media works, because the two of us have worked together, yet we're never in the same room. My nonprofit sued and got the Pfizer data released. It took us over a year in a lawsuit to do that, the Pfizer trials of the COVID vaccine. But what I'm guided to do is, let me just get this out to the public. Republic. But then look what Naomi did. She gets hundreds of, incredible experts together and then starts combing through, tens, hundreds of thousands of pages of data and information and writes the Pfizer papers, book. We have to celebrate that is actually what's changing the world. That is what got that's what got Robert Kennedy to join Donald Trump. And what I would say is, let's be careful that we don't complain too much about media while not recognizing that the world has actually changed, because Donald Trump was hated by everyone in mainstream media, 24-hour-a-day news cycle against him. Robert Kennedy Jr., I was running as director of communications. That guy was polling 20% of the vote and still only got 2 appearances in mainstream media during the entire time we ran him as president. They tried to act like he didn't exist. And then when he did get out there, of course, they just, abused him and slandered him. But both of those guys are now changing the world as we know it. That says, first of all, that all of that $10 billion spent on COVID propaganda and all of the media pushing against these 2 guys, and they still overcame it. It means they are no longer the power brokers. They are not actually deciding how we think. It's shows like yours, Dr. Drew. It's Naomi Wolf that's out there and writing, and independent shows like mine and Joe Rogan. We actually now, are the voices. We are the free press. And so let's celebrate that too and recognize that we're here. These conversations are happening because NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN have all lost control of the Republic. Thank God.
Thank God. Well said. Here. I mean, I'm absolutely cheering. And I do want to validate what you just said, Del. It's really incredible and providential. You and Aaron Siri did crack open that vault, which would have stayed closed for 75 years or more if you hadn't, been such a pioneer with Aaron Siri and your teams in breaking that open to the public. And then, we, slaved away for 2.5 years to analyze what you found. And Dr. Drew, I want to give him credit too, looking back on what we should celebrate, because I remember during the lockdowns and the, rollout of the vaccine, you, Dr. Drew, were very understandably, sober and cautious as you should be. But then at a certain point, you could no longer stay with the safe consensus reality. And you just started to follow where the science led and have people on your show that, raise the difficult questions, the inconvenient questions, telling the inconvenient story, as Del's title has it. And that was very courageous. And I just want to credit all of you and thank you for, acknowledging, our team as well. It's true. And one thing we haven't lost that the legacy media has lost is trust, the trust of our audience. They know we're telling them the truth because we have the battle scars, and also what we say checks out. They can check it for themselves. We invite them to check it for themselves. So you're right. We should be celebrating. Just while I have the mic for just a moment, I just want to add to the record, if I may, that there are more than 10 people who died from immediate subsequent to the COVID vaccine. And I'm sorry, more than 10 children. There's a 7-year-old girl buried in a footnote in England. It's disgusting, in the Pfizer papers, who died of a stroke after receiving the mRNA injection. And the science is so evil because the authors of the Pfizer papers in Pfizer split her off and really hid the data, literally in a footnote, so it would be overlooked. And there's a baby who died of multi-organ system failure after nursing from a vaccinated mom. So there are at least 2 more. And there are 2 reports, again, for the record, and I hope that Senator Johnson is listening or will hear about this, and Vinay Prasad, of course. There's our liver report and our stroke report, and half the deaths in both of those reports took place within 48 hours of the injection.
Yeah. Right. Which were excluded from a lot of the studies and the original Pfizer analysis, right? Or anybody lost to follow up in the first 48 hours were just dismissed. So isn't that interesting?
They were literally illegally. Yes.
Well,
yeah, it's wild. It's It's wild.
It's
Well,
wild.
to that point, I mean, all that Vinay Prasad and I believe it was Tracy Beth Hogue that first said, let me look at the VAERS data. Let me just see what's been reported. And she pulled out all the babies that were reported to have died. Now, the CDC has been buelling on, just on and on about how you can't trust that, but it's there for a reason. It's one of the only capture systems. It's only a civilian capture system we have. And to think that when someone finally went through it and called those parents, and the question I'd like to have is, did any of those parents get a call from the FDA prior to this year when Tracy Beth Hogue decided to do it? No. And that is what is so shocking about this, is that you were releasing a totally experimental product. You had only a few capture systems that would have seen if we had a real tragic problem or error or issue. And even though we were seeing record submissions to VAERS, no one at FDA, no one in our government, no one thought maybe we should look into some of these deaths. And when they finally did, to be clear, they're only looking at 90. How many people even know VAERS exists? How many people know to report it? Almost nobody. Then when they do know about it, how many actually follow through? The study at Harvard, when they looked at the VAERS system, found that less than 1% of actual injuries are even being reported. So there's a potential that this 10 babies is 1% of the actual, and probably no more than 10% of the actual amount of deaths that could be out there. So this is just the very tip of the iceberg of this issue. But to finally have an FDA that is voicing these things, to finally have regulatory agencies, as I said, to finally have an advisory committee on immunization practices meetings that are discussing how long was the safety test on the hepatitis B vaccine. Was 5 days really long enough with no placebo group? And where is the data? Thank God we're finally asked these questions. Thank God someone's looking at the VAERS data and starting to report on it. I think we're going to start uncovering, as Naomi knows, I mean, talk about bodies being buried. There are bodies buried all over, this vaccine and many, many others. And really quickly, a shout out to President Trump, his mandate now to Robert Kennedy Jr. to now do a peer nation review. If Denmark is only vaccinating about 29 vaccines compared to our 72, they're not having outbreaks. They're not having any issues with, deadly diseases, then why can't we go on a 29 vaccine program? And I would like the other part of Denmark's program too. It's your choice. But that mandate by President Trump is going to override anything else, any other agreements that Robert Kennedy Jr. might have made with a senator or two. They're not going to be overcome that. The executive branch has spoken now, and President Trump has given his mandate. This investigation is now going to happen. It's very, very exciting news.
That is exciting.
Del, can you stay with me till like the top of the hour? Because I know Naomi's got to go, and I want to spend 5 minutes with her, and then I have to go to break. But
I'll be
what I want
here.
to do, Naomi, is spend about 5 minutes with you. Okay, good. 5 minutes with you right now before I go to break. And I want to just ask you really quickly about a couple other quick topics. You've been focused, I believe, on a post from Sasha Latipova about Dr. Boyle. Is that correct? Can you tell us about that concern?
Focused. I mean, I've certainly been thinking about it. Yes.
Concerned about it. I'm not
laughing. Yeah, I'm not laughing because these things are funny. I'm laughing because some things are so scary, and the times that we're living in are so scary or dark.
It's macabre.
It's macabre. Yeah. But yeah, do you want me to describe what her post is about, or what the issue is?
And then I'll let you go. I know you have a heart out here. And by the way, for people that keep complaining that we're kind of stepping at each other, when you have three people in a delay, it gets wonky that way. It's just the way it is. We're not stepping at each other. We're not letting each other talk. We don't hear each other, so we start talking, and then the delay steps in. But anyway, talk to me about what you're seeing in that post and what you're concerned about.
Sure. And if I interrupted anyone, I'm sorry. So
no, it's not you. It's not you.
Okay. So Dr. Francis Boyle was one of the most distinguished, I believe, human rights lawyers, and certainly one of the most distinguished human rights lawyers working in the field of bioweapons. He spent his whole career at the absolute highest level of global treaties and advocacy. And he was the man who wrote the bioweapons treaty that governs the United States. That basically says you can't deploy bioweapons on civilian populations. so he knows intimately what a bioweapon is, what it does. Early in the COVID drama of early 2020, he started to say this is a bioweapon, both COVID and the vaccine. And other people have, certainly made this point because they have very similar structures and they come from the same place. And he warned the world this is a bioweapon, and he is such a distinguished voice that he was the most powerful voice to date, having made that warning. And I interviewed him, I believe it was in 2023 or 2024. Very, very deeply knowledgeable man, very brave man. And it's one of the most important interviews I've ever had. Sadly, it should have been front page news, where he was literally saying, I know what a bioweapon is. I know what it does. I know what it looks like. Both the virus and the vaccine are bioweapons. And he has said very clearly in public their goal, they're designed to, and, people have asked me very skeptical questions when I've said the same thing. I don't have his background, that they're designed to depopulate and to disable and to kill. Well, he said they're designed to depopulate and disable and to kill. I mean, 1,000% to disrupt reproduction and to disable and to kill. Those were his, I'm paraphrasing, but those were his words, those three. And he died he passed away, I should say, in January of this year. And Sasha Latipova said he was in good health. He was in his early 70s, I believe, very active, and he died suddenly. And that's all we know. And I don't like to be ghoulish, and I don't like to intrude on families' privacy, but I think it's worth noting that he was one of 5 witnesses, and by far the most kind of distinguished belly of the beast witness, slated to testify in a trial in the Netherlands against Pfizer and Albert Bourla and Bill Gates, specifically for this issue, depopulating, disabling, and murdering people with the injection. So Sasha said, she believes, that there's a problem with the death. I'm not going to kind of paraphrase what she's saying, because again, I don't like to intrude on families' grief or make, baseless speculations, but I don't think it's good. I think it's concerning that he died suddenly when his voice in that context would be the most damning, the most unanswerable voice. And I just want to add, it's not in a vacuum. The lawyer convening and, leading the prosecution, I believe, for this trial was arrested in and detained in very severe circumstances. And this is the Netherlands, Dr. Drew, which is like the most chill country ordinarily. So these are dramatic interventions that do not align with the rule of law and due process. So I don't know what happened. I mean, God rest his soul. He was an extraordinary person, but it's a great loss, whatever happened.
I would just say to anyone listening, you don't listen carefully to Sasha Latipova or to Naomi Wolf at your peril. I've had experience with both of them enough to know that if it sounds tough to swallow, just pay attention. I don't know, but I know these 2 women, and I know you at your own peril if you question the veracity of what they're reporting. So, okay, is there some place we can hear that interview?
Oh, it would be Daily Cloud a long time ago, 2 years ago. Yeah, I really need to find it and repost it. It was powerful.
Repost it.
And I was, honestly, the other thing that I'll never forget about that interview is I was at that time in the wilderness of media. I mean, I didn't have a giant reach. I had been censored. I'd been banned. And his sense of responsibility to the world and urgency about this message led him to clear out an hour of his schedule to talk to me in the middle of the wilderness, right? Because the Guardian and the BBC weren't carrying his message forward. That really was very moving to me.
All right. I'm going to let you go. I know you have a heart out. Anything coming up we should look for from you?
Well, I'm doing a podcast every day because we just cracked 210 in the US, and I think like 190 in Canada, and in the top 200 or 100 in 10 other countries around the world for my podcast,
Great.
Outspoken. So I'm going full bore. So come over to Substack, everyone, and watch and subscribe and support, if you would, Outspoken, or over at Daily Clout, where we have tools to pass or stop bills from your phone, where you can, pass your own legislation from your phone. Otherwise, thank you. I am so glad that you guys are out there, you and your team, and Caleb and Susan. It's so important to have all of your voices and talents. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Naomi. We'll see you again very soon. And we're going to take a little break.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah, indeed.
Happy Hanukkah.
We're going to
Merry
take a little break.
Christmas.
And happy holidays, everybody. And so we'll take a little break here, back with Del Bigtree right after this. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid, it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years, and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15. If there was ever a time to be rationally ready, it is now. I urge you to consider getting one of the emergency kits from the Wellness Company, because TWC has 7 different kits that are customized for a variety of situations. Wouldn't be a bad idea to take a look at each, considering, say, what we've just been through in California with the fires. I was happy to have the field kit on hand, and the Contagion kit in particular is suited for what is being predicted to be the next outbreak, or avian or bird flu. Of course, the same experts from the COVID era are freaking out about this potential pandemic, but don't panic. Just arm yourself with the meds you might need if this comes to pass. Contagion Emergency Kit contains ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, Tamiflu, and budesonide, an inhaler that is good for airway reactivity and tightness, as well as reducing viral replication in the airways. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off your purchase. And a reminder, holidays coming up, give the gifts of health and wellness. Lots of great products over at TWC.com. And of course, the emergency kits. We've seen what they can do to us. We've seen how they can take away our access to healthcare. You need to be rationally ready, and these are great gifts. Fatty's a great gift. We have lots of things that you can, I would think you'd be sharing with family and friends. All right, Del Bigtree is, what's that? I did not, because we didn't show those. But yes, I have 2 great supplements there too.
Well, my mic wasn't on. V-Shred MD is where you can find the NAD and the Cinesync products, as well as a great sleep product, all per Dr. Drew. Dr. Drew approved.
Thank you so much. And we have Del Bigtree, of course, an inconvenient study. And I want to talk to you, Del, more about, you went off a few minutes ago about, I thought it's very interesting that you, me, and Naomi are here sort of taking a beat and assessing what we've been through and what we should be thankful and grateful for. It's great. I really think that's an important thing to do. And you're absolutely right. Mainstream media has lost its teeth. But my concern, and I am so grateful for independent media and everything you mentioned, everything you said, I almost wanted to stand up and applaud. But for 2026, it just seems to me our task is to get people at least exposed to information that don't know anything about what the 3 of us have been talking about today. There's at least 40% of the country that is just in a different universe And I would like them to be exposed to this universe, whether they fully embrace it or not. They don't even know this is happening.
Yeah, it's really, we live in two different worlds. It reminds me of a mini series years ago, Martian Chronicles, where you had the people living on Mars, and then there was these ghost ships going by. Two different times are crossing. I feel like that's how we're living. I'm living in a different world. Like when you watch the ACIP meetings this week and you watch the difference between Malone and the panel and the people speaking, and then Cody Meisner, and I forget the other pro-vaccine doctor, but it's like we are speaking different languages. We're living in different worlds. I know we all care. We all care about children. No one's saying anyone's evil here or trying to destroy the world. But how is it we are
on this
so
side, but you hear it on the other side.
Apart? I know. Like they accuse us of being heartless or mindless. And yet we're the ones that keep posting our science, and they won't post any science. Where is your evidence for what's being said? So, yeah, and it is. I think we're all, I'll be honest, like going back for the holidays, I'm going to go back to Colorado to visit my family. I'm losing sleep right now at I find myself running, how am I going to have some of these conversations? Because my family's got Trump derangement syndrome, you know, and like I'll wake up, I'll write down a great thought, like a line I had in a dream, is how conscious I am of this. But but I think it's really, really important. What I think would be the worst case scenario is that in order to protect, family unity, we don't have these conversations. That's why COVID happened. COVID happened because none of us were speaking to each other. If you even think about the mandates on large corporations, there were groups that said to me, they're going to force me to get vaccinated. I was like, talk to everyone you know at your business and just tell them, I don't want to get the vaccine because your business must be like the rest of this country. At least 30% of the country rejected the vaccine, which means 30% of your company is on your side, but you don't know it because they've got you afraid to speak to each other. That's how authoritarianism works. If you speak to each other, then you go to your boss and say, 30% of us are going to walk out of this building if you decide to mandate this product. And the companies that held together, the ones that get vaccinated, did exactly that. There's safety in numbers. There's safety in numbers of the future of we're talking about the future of our species, Dr. Drew. You know this. These are critical conversations that need to be happening, both not just in the government. We should be waiting for Donald Trump and Robert Kennedy Jr. to save the world, especially in America, where the system is a mandate of, for, and by the people. The people have to get involved, but the people have to be informed. So I really think we have a special moment right now because we've been the fringe, right? It's been hard to talk about the lack of vaccine safety studies because the majority of people have a belief system that we're against. The entire government seem to be on one side. But I assure you, when you go back for the holidays, and we all know Dell's the part of the family that has this belief in whatever, but they're freaking out right now. The other side, though they have been sort of brainwashed, living in a bubble, they want to talk about it because they're in a defensive position. They're not in the offensive position right now. I think there's a psychology to how we have those conversations. We have to recognize that we actually have the government. It's now moving in our favor, but those on the other side, they're going to want to complain about it. That's going to be our opening to this conversation. So we've got to prepare. I'm preparing, as I say, laying in bed, how I'm going to be gracious about this. Yes, it's going my way. Yes, freedom is re-entering medical decision-making. I think it's great. Why do you not think that's great? Do you not want to have the right to choose? Do you think the government should be making your decisions for you? There's a very easy place, I think, to start having these conversations. But to your point, we've got to override that brainwashing box that's inside and it's owned by pharma. But this is the moment to do it. It's going to be over these holidays right now as we're all coming together. We're meeting with family. This idea, the destruction of America, really was in this idea of being politically correct, of not rocking the boat. Let's not talk religion. Let's not talk politics. That's just going to upset things. This nation is based on our ability to communicate, and we cannot allow them to tell us that's the wrong way. But we have to be gracious. Ask questions of your loved one. Try to understand how it is that they have the perspective. Show your curiosity, and then maybe in kind they'll have some curiosity about your perspective. That we've got to get there, because these elections that are going to be happening, the midterm elections, are going to be critical to this work that is being done by this government, that it continues. So it shouldn't be political. I still consider myself politically marooned. I ran with Bobby when he was a Democrat. We became independents. We joined Donald Trump because there was an opportunity there. I'm very, very happy with a lot of what I'm seeing President Trump doing. Not all of it. There's no perfect leadership, but I believe we're watching a government that is surrounding them. And look at what's happening. Like, beyond even vaccines and drugs, did you just see yesterday $700 million being put forward by the Department of Agriculture towards regenerative farming? That shows that Bobby is having an effect even outside of his jurisdiction there in HHS, which means we have a government that's talking to each other. We really haven't seen something like this, I don't think, in my lifetime, at least not that I remember. It's really exciting. We should be sharing that excitement, that positivity, in the kindest, most gracious way that we can, and see if we can't wake some of our friends and family up.
Your mouth to God's ears, and then a reminder. Really, there's been such a weird. I don't know. We've been through this weird thing, and I in terms of the overreach of government and authorities of all types. I've been watching a bunch of French radio for a little while now, and the one thing that Marine Le Pen keeps pointing out that I think we need a dose of over here is the people are sovereign. That's the form of government we are in. The people are sovereign. It's their word, that not the government, not the NGOs, not the money, not the media, not the companies, not the Atlantic. The people are sovereign here, and we should be disgusted when that is intruded upon in any way.
It's one of the things that in the politics of it, like when I look back, I mean, Naomi was a Democrat. I mean, she worked with Bill Clinton. I was a progressive liberal. Part of what scares me that I see in that space, and not to make this political, is this sort of self-hatred, right? And I almost, my joke, is that we were all told to, treat others as you would like them to treat you. And then, but I'd say, unless you're a masochist. And I feel like there's a huge part of our population that are so self-loathing and hating that I don't want me to be treated like you're treating yourself. And I think that's a serious dilemma here. And when you say sovereignty, when we say sovereignty to some of these people, we say that the people should, really, it's about our voice. They have been taught now to not trust people. It's never them. It's never me. I don't have a problem. But everyone around me is stupid. Everyone around me is dangerous. Everyone around me won't back. Everyone around me make bad choices. That's why we need a government. And this is what I realize is that liberal thinking, it's the mommy state, that our hatred of each other, our fear of each other, is how they're getting away with us voting in an authoritarian government, which is what I think we were about to see. I really think we dodged that bullet. I may not vote conservative the rest of my life, but right now, as long as you're going to keep saying your job is to stop free speech and end misinformation, and the government's going to dictate what we can say and how we spend it and inject things into us, then I am all about a No Kings March. On that front, I'm all about no kings too. Do not ever allow the government to inject us with things we have no control of or decide what free speech is.
Yeah, it is astonishing. There is the hatred you were talking about actually has a term. It's called oikophobia. Okay, and it is literally translated. Oikophobia, O-I-K-O phobia. And it is literally translated from Greek as hatred of one's home. And it's considered a description of the hatred of society generally. And people that I've read some articles on this say that when societies become very successful, they tend to turn inward with oikophobia. And we must be aware of that and fight against that and not allow that to happen. If you believe the writings of the Fourth Turning book, there should be a generation that comes in and rescues us a bit from this oikophobia that we seem to be in. because you're absolutely right about that. It's we have nothing to hate here. Okay. There's a lot here, Del. We've covered a lot of territory today. Is there anything you want people to know about what's coming up for you, or where they should go to find you, or the Inconvenient Study?
Well, look, I think this film is a very, very important tool, even if you think you understand this issue. One of my favorite things about it is how many people are reporting to me. I had a loved one that would not listen to this issue, but they watched an Inconvenient Study. They found it to not be overreaching, and it's really got them thinking twice. I think this film is really good on that part. I worked hard to make it just stand as an objective a space. And frankly, what the power of it is in the hidden video camera footage of Dr. Marcus Servos, a world-renowned, brilliant doctor. And you see his internal conflict. He's very honest about it. He believes the study should be out there, but he knows it'll ruin his career. That's the part of the film, I think, that if everyone saw that, it really will help change this conversation. That's the tool. I mean, I think it's there. I think the holidays is a great time to share that film with everyone that you know. Of course, you can keep watching what I'm doing at thehighwire.com. I want to give a shout out to Robert Kennedy Jr. There were a lot of doubters. I know Naomi's been harsh at times, as we should be. That's fine. Criticism of the government, that is what it's supposed to be. I'd like to see a little bit of that in the right framing by the mainstream. But look at what he did this year, just reflecting on removing chemical petroleum dyes from baby food, getting lead and arsenic out of baby food, out of formulas, finally bringing forward a drug that can help people with autism and leucovorin. And I think one thing we didn't talk about was changing the CDC's webpage on autism, now stating what is true. There is not science to define that vaccines do not cause autism. That statement still lives on a page that they say because of an agreement he made with Senator Cassidy, but it says this is not a scientific statement. It is not a scientific statement. And Dr. Drew, I think what we have to realize is that we all have a confirmation bias. I'm asking over the holidays that we all take a little bit of a humility pill here and say, 100%. We have the ability to get it wrong. We all believe, we see what we believe. We are truly creating our reality with what we see. So we all have to be careful with that. Every time I see someone get sick or has cancer or suddenly a major health crisis, my brain says it's a vaccine injury. That can't possibly be everybody that's getting sick. Right. And I got to check in with myself. The opposite is true for those that believe that, hepatitis B, it's rare. It's a rare injury issue. For those that suffer it, it's horrible. But for those that suffer vaccine injury, it's horrible. Why can't we all speak about them on the same balanced level? If we could just get to a place where we say, I see your side, I'm listening to it, I think we can make the changes that really matter. But we're all suffering from it. We're all suffering from a confirmation bias, and nobody's more, prone to it than scientists and doctors, has been my experience. So I think we live in a time now where you should not bow down just because someone's wearing a white lab coat. I think you really have to trust your own instincts now and really ask yourself, am I getting a full, well-rounded picture of what's going on there? That's what I'm trying to do with The Highwire, thehighwire.com. That's what Robert Kennedy Jr. is working out with the government. I want to thank President Trump for having the courage to let Robert Kennedy Jr., Vinay Prasad, Dr. Marty McCary, Dr. Mehmet Oz, these are, and Jay Bhattacharya, these are, historic figures. They're going to go down in history at a very, very important time. These debates, these conversations are happening, and I'm just excited about that. And that's what we're celebrating on The Highwire.
Drew.
Go to The Highwire, everybody. Del, great to see you. We'll talk
Drew,
soon,
get
no
this.
doubt.
Get this. Because we had Del, had Del on the show today, TikTok just gave us a strike for violating their community guidelines and kicked our stream off in the middle of the show. So
welcome,
I don't know
Drew.
if we'll be able to stream for another week on TikTok. Thanks, Del.
Yeah, I have that effect.
That's so nutty, cuckoo. All right, there we go. Well, keep fighting the fight.
Right.
Talk to you soon.
All right, will do. I hope you have me on again after this. Okay.
Next time I get on
Not the
TikTok, I
first
want to
time.
get kicked off. Yeah, exactly. Can you go to them and ask them exactly how we did so?
Yeah, I'm gonna raise a big stink about it because that's pretty ridiculous, especially in this day and age. Like it's
yes.
That's ridiculous.
And then you had the former director of the CDC up there at a video. What was that all about?
Oh, that was Dr. Rochelle. I forget what she was talking about. I tried to get the captions playing on. Yeah, Rochelle Walensky. Yeah. And it was a video. I think it was Naomi had posted it back when I showed that.
Well, Michelle had been wrong a lot, so I'm not really interested in hearing from her anymore. There's what's coming up. Peter St. Onge and Dave Pelletier on next, let's see, we're Thursday today, next Tuesday. Jonathan Alpert, Martha Byrne, and her husband, Shane Cashman. And Elizabeth Kucinich. So this is, I think we have a couple of it. It's because of Christmas, I guess, right?
We have some more that we're lining up, but also it's possible and actually likely that the one on New Year's Eve is going to be earlier in the day, earlier than 4 Pacific. We might be moving that earlier if she can make it, so we can celebrate.
I would appreciate that. All right, beautiful thing, everybody. Now I want to Dell sort of mentioned so many things I want to just quickly follow up on here, which is irrational certitude is the enemy, rational uncertainty, rationally uncertain, humility, like Dell just said. And, as it pertains to RFK Jr., I want to confirm that not only is he the right man for the job, he has told me that he loves this job. He's like, this is like the pinnacle of his entire life, what he has built towards his entire life. Cheryl, his wife, confirmed that he is very happy doing that job and really not interested in a presidency. He's interested in making these changes and making America healthy again. And finally, 2 things. Beware the Dunning-Kruger syndrome, everybody. If you know a little bit about something, you feel like you know a lot. That's called Dunning-Kruger. When you really know a lot, you feel like you know nothing. That's where real expertise kicks in. So the graph kind of goes, oh, I know, I think I know a lot. I feel like I know a lot. And as I know a lot, I feel like I know very, very little. So the other thing is pay attention to what we just were talking about, that the world, our perceptions of the world as we know it have been highly processed through propaganda and advertising and moneyed interests and government. There's so many things, and now we're learning I'm sure we'll be reporting in 2026 on the extent to which intelligence agencies have been manipulating and shaping our reality in ways that are not real. So pay attention, be careful, think for yourself, question everything, and we will see you next on Tuesday at 2:00. See you then. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. Emily Barsh is our content producer. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.